everyone. Welcome to the Nivedita and Dianne Show. I am so stoked today. Oh my gosh, I am so excited. You have no idea how excited I am, and you know why in a moment. I would love to introduce my lovely co-host, and then I introduce myself, Nivedita Saraswati from Australia. Welcome, Nivedita, and welcome to our show. So why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Welcome, everyone. My name is Nivedita Saraswati, as Dianne said, and I'm the owner and director of My Virtual Healing Center, which is an online healing business, which I really love because I offer so many modalities to help people become happier and healthier and become their best self. So that, in a nutshell, is what I do. And you can find me on my website, which is myvirtualhealingcenter.com. Over to you, Dianne.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, my name is Dianne Ojar here in Toronto, and I wear many hats. And later in the show, you're going to see a couple of things I have going. My background is NLP, hypnotherapy. I have a traditional media business. I'm also a Tao Hands practitioner. You may or may not understand what that is, but it's okay. Throughout the show, you'll probably figure that out. But what I love to do is I love to give you that experiential breakthrough experience, which, Nivedita has gone through that so many times. Because really and truly, you're going to be hearing a conversation today where we're going to be talking about, Nivedita was talking to our guest earlier, and she asked a question. You chose to come back into this life in this 100 years, we say, as for what she has, this, well, let me tell you about my guest. So enough about me. Let me just tell you about my guest, because I can't wait. I have known this incredible woman for maybe about 20, little give or take years. We work together. Her name is Tazim Kanji from Kenya, and she has lived for like 45 plus years with type 1 diabetes. And I don't want to give away too much of a story because we're going to be talking about quite a lot of things. And I'm hoping this is not the first and last you'll be here. And if you have lots of questions, please do put it in the comments, catch us on the replay, share this, because her journey is one of the most incredible journeys I know. A couple of years ago, she had, maybe about 2-3 years ago, she had a double transplant for kidneys and pancreas. So I want to bring Tazim on. She knows how much I love her. I respect her. She's one of the most disciplined persons I know when it comes to illness. And she's been through double transplant with kidneys. And this is what we're talking about here today. So please do help me welcome Tazim Kanji. And there we go. Hello, Tazim.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction, Dianne. And sorry, can you pronounce your name again for me?
Nivedita.
Nivedita. Thank you. So yes, as Dianne said, I'm here to just share my journey with type 1 diabetes and all its complications. And I am no longer a type 1 diabetic, but I don't take insulin. I don't have to test my blood sugars, and I can eat whatever I like. But my journey, by all means, has not been an easy one. My history goes back to when I was 8, diagnosed with diabetes, type 1 diabetes. And, I was diagnosed at a time where really they didn't have much knowledge on diabetes or the complications. The food and, what diet you were supposed to have was very limited, and they encouraged eating carbohydrates. And of course, with long term, after 20 years, I developed the complications, which included the diabetic retinopathy, which is the eyes, and then the neuropathy, which affected my feet, and of course, kidney disease. So my journey is basically about that and all the things I went through and how I got through it through hard work, discipline, determination, and dedication. And it's been a long journey, a painful journey, and lots of tears, lots of joys. But at the end of the day, I'm really happy with who I am because I've learned a lot about myself. And it comes to a point where you just start loving yourself and accepting what has happened to you and making the best out of what you don't look at your past as, you don't mourn your past, you sort of look at what you have gained. And that's the premise of my success, I think, because in 2018, I received a double transplant, and I was on dialysis for 3 years. And, I'm much healthier now, and it's amazing. I would have never thought that I would actually get this incredible, miracle and gift from my deceased donor. And there's just so much to grateful for. So that's my journey.
It is such an incredible one. Nivedita, do you have to say? You're muted.
Yes, it is an amazing journey that you've been on, Taz. And I said that she chose this hard journey when she first came into life, into existence, because she has so much to give to other people, to help other people, for other people to learn from how to accept themselves as they are and love themselves more, because that's really important. And most of us go through life with thinking, oh, I don't like this about myself, or I judge myself. Like every 10 years, I used to say, oh, I wasn't bad looking then, 10 years ago. But, I wasn't thinking of myself I was thinking, oh, a few more lines, a few more things like that. But, you learn to love the skin you're in.
Yes.
And that's what I teach about self-love.
Yeah. And that's
absolutely. No, go ahead, Taz.
No, I was just, I journal a lot of my things. And in one of my sections in my writing, I mentioned the fact that comparison is a killer because, if you look at social media and what's out there, everyone looks at that and thinks, I need to be this size or I need to look this way. And my skin isn't quite that way. And, and of course, if you have health issues, you even feel more down. But then, we all have to remind ourselves that we all have our unique journey. And every single person out there has a problem, that whatever you see online, it's all, it's makeup, it's hair, it's this and that, but everyone has something about them that they're insecure about. And you have to remind yourself that you have to love yourself. And that's what it's all about. And, you have to go down that path where you discover yourself. It takes a lot of insight, self-awareness, but you have to work on your inner self so that you get to that point of self-acceptance and love. And actually, that's probably the most beautiful thing you can do for yourself, because no matter what, you always feel secure with knowing that you're just enough, and that's okay.
Exactly.
Thank you for that. Taz, let's take it, let's break it down. Let's take it a step. Let's start. Okay, first of all, if you want to just briefly tell us how this happened, because you've had this since you were like 10 years old.
Eight, yeah.
So let's take it there to understand you just didn't, like my dad's diabetic since in his 20s. I'm diabetic. My grandparents were, my siblings and so forth, but we got at a later stage when I had my 3 kids, gestational. And of course I still do, and I'm not a very good girl at it. And I own up to that. However, living a child went straight onto insulin, not knowing what was going on in the first place. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, how it happened? Because there may be someone there who's living with a child with juvenile diabetes, and they're more disciplined than the adults, telling the truth. I'm sure they're more disciplined than myself. So why don't you tell us a little bit, not too deep too much, but how it happened for people to understand the story.
I was 8 when I was diagnosed, and my parents had come to Canada for a visit, and that's when it happened. So that happened when I was 6. So they came to Canada, and then I started getting sick because it could have been either a vaccine but I was hit in the bike with one of my cousins. He accidentally hit me in the bike, and then I started internally bleeding. So just to go forward, the doctors there said that I probably had a tropical disease because I was from Africa. They ruled that out, and then they said I had leukemia. So they ruled that one out. And then after that, my parents returned to Kenya. Of course, they'd be very concerned. What's going on with her? She's losing weight. She's drinking a lot. She's urinating. I used to be in my bed, and I was just very tired. And then finally, it was discovered. So I probably had diabetes a year before that, but it was undiagnosed. And when I finally did get it, the 1970s when I was diagnosed, and at that time, we lived in a very careless and carefree, society. I mean, people just said, okay, you have diabetes, you have to take 2 shots, you have to test your urine because they didn't have glucometers. And, diet and exercise and things like that, they didn't have a diabetic team like they do today. So there was no one to check your eyes or your feet, or your kidneys, nothing like that. So growing up with that, I think my parents always felt, guilty. They always felt like, did they do something wrong? Was it hereditary? I mean, no one really knew much about it. So as far as I was concerned, I went into the Nairobi hospital, which was a private hospital. And I was just, accepting of what had happened to me. I didn't cry. I wasn't scared that I was the only child in that ward because everyone else was an adult. And my coping mechanism was that every time they'd come and check me, I just became like, I wanted to be a nurse. So I got a nurse's kit from my parents and they gave me a little nurse's hat. And I would go around and just, help the other patients who were elderly because I recognized, I empathized with them because they couldn't get out of bed, but I could. So I just learned to deal with it. And that was my first lesson of acceptance. But yes, I know my parents went through a lot. It was sad for them to see because, the doctor said, okay, she's going to have this for the rest of her life. And they knew that the life expectancy could be. They didn't know, but they never let me live my life with limitations. I did everything. So if my brother was in a judo class, I was there. If he rode a skateboard, I was riding the skateboard. If he rode a bike, I was riding the bike. So I just went through everything, not knowing the complications either. And maybe that was why we never thought about it. It was 20 years later when all of a sudden I got my wake up call and, I really had to tighten things up. And then that's when I went back to how I was eating, what I was eating, studying about, carbohydrates and insulin and trying to regulate it and match it. And finally, I was able to get my blood sugars well into control. So I believe my wake up call is what saved me from going blind and probably amputation. And even though they told me in 2002 that I would have to start dialysis, I didn't start until 2016 because I took the proactive action of just making sure that everything I was doing was, just around my blood sugars. That's the main thing with diabetes. If you keep your blood sugars under control, most likely you're going to avoid the complications.
It blows my mind because I know your story, and you have some of the most incredible parents.
Yes,
I
do.
am not kidding you. We all want parents. Trust me on that. The most loving, caring, and they never treated you different in any way. Nor your brother
No, they didn't. They
as
just,
well.
yeah.
They let you live, and like I said, and I know they're watching. So hugs and kisses to you because I love you guys so much. And you were working for the bank. That's how we met. And it's not easy being visually dispaired because you had this big
the Zoom text.
Zoom, yeah, whatever. And you're listening and you're working and you used to work nights, you used to work days, and you worked. How long did you work at the bank for?
Well, I'm still there, but I'm just.
I know, but I mean, literally
22 years.
22 years. So she was functioning like a normal person. I remember you used to cook and bring food in and have a little potlucks and stuff. So it didn't stop us from doing anything. Go ahead.
That you're right. It has a lot to do with my parents because they never made me feel that way. Like even when I was young, I was probably around 9, and they used to have these Ladybird series, the cookbooks, and my mother would encourage me to buy. Like I loved buying them because we didn't have diabetic books, so I learned to cook, and it just became a part of who I was. But having the vision loss does cause you to see, not see a lot of things, but then. Again, I guess it's the glass half empty, half full. Whatever I could see, I just worked with that. So whatever you have, you just work with it. And I mean, for many people, it's easier said than done. But the human mind has an amazing capability of adjusting to things as long as you don't resist. That's the key. I always say acceptance. So when they told me about at the age of 27, I mean, it's possible you could end up blind, or in a year at the age of 27 again. 6 months later, it's like, oh, now you have bilateral Charcot joint deformity. So you could end up having an amputation if things are not working, if your foot collapses, if this happens. And then after 6 months, now you have renal disease, the beginning of it. So you're going to have to start. Now, I went to that dark place where I was like, I have no purpose in life. What's the point of living? That's how I felt. And it's okay. I had to embrace that place because that's what got me out to see the light and have hope. And I had to work on myself. I had to rebuild myself. I had to accept the new me as a person with disabilities. And I had to just work with that. And now I don't feel like I have disabilities, even though I do, because I've created my life where I have that little piece of happiness for myself. And that's very important. And above all, I found self-love, love for myself and acceptance for myself. And my family doesn't treat me like I have a disability. Like I do everything, you know, if they need something, I'm there, you know, if they need something looked up, I find it. It's not a big deal. And I think that's because they never made me feel like I was a victim, which I wasn't. I'm not a victim. And I never had that, you know, and I didn't play the shame and blame game. Like, you could have done this, you could have done that. That doesn't help because you know what? I lived in a time where, like I said, whatever my parents were taught is whatever they taught me. So I never say, you know, I mean, thank God for diabetics today. I think, wow, amazing. You know, you guys have the continuous glucometer meters. You can test your blood sugar. You have the insulin pump, which I had the pleasure of using in 2012. And it's just amazing. So if anyone's diagnosed as a diabetic today, it's a real blessing because you can keep your blood sugars right on target. And you're never going to have perfect days, but you can get close to perfect.
Okay, and for those who are watching, please do share this with your friends or family who has any traces or been diagnosed with diabetes type 1 or type 2. And if you have any comments or questions for Taz, please do put it in the comments. Thank you for everyone who's watching here. Taz, you have gone through and Nivedita will talk to you about something else in a moment. You have gone through a lot of physical challenges in your body. Physical. I mean, there were times you walk with a foot brace. There are times when I remember when you went to the gym and you came back and your ankle, your bones crushed. Why don't you tell us some of the complications? What I'm saying to everyone here right now, and we're doing this for a reason. We're being very open here because the woman you're seeing here she's all whole. She's physically whole, but she has lots of physical challenges which never stopped her. So why don't you tell us some of the challenges apart from the eyesight that you literally live with?
Yeah, so the condition you're talking about is from neuropathy. And if anyone doesn't know what neuropathy is, it's loss of sensation in your feet caused by diabetes. Because if you want to look at diabetes in this way, just to make it more clear, every human being, we all have about approximately 5 liters of blood in our body. That's what we have. And for a person to have a normal blood sugar, it's like having 1 teaspoon of sugar. And if you have another teaspoon put in there, you are considered diabetic. So when you have long-term diabetes or if you have uncontrolled diabetes, it's sugar just being put in there. And eventually the blood vessels in your body, primarily the eyes and the heart and the feet and the kidneys, that's the major, there are a few others, but that's primarily what diabetes will affect, type 1. And even type 2, if you get to that point where you have to go insulin dependent. So that's what happened. And with me, I had the neuropathy. So I really didn't have, sensation in my feet. I mean, I had some, but not to the point where I would notice if my foot was fractured, which is what happened. So I was walking on a fractured foot. The trauma on the foot will cause your foot to sort of collapse. So your midfoot is where you lose your arch. And so it happened on my one foot, and that required extensive bracing. So I had to wear these AFO braces, and then they happened on the next foot. So again, I had to go through the bracing, and it took an interval between intervals. It took about 10 years for my foot to finally solidify, but it's not perfect. Like I still, have issues, but I have to wear special orthotics and things like that. I ended up on a wheelchair for 8 months, and then, again, and it was just very, very extensive. And to be honest with you, I never thought I would ever walk normally. But like I said, now I do, 20, 25,000 steps a day. And for me, it was total like once I found out I could exercise with the proper AFO ankle braces, I was able to go to the gym and work towards getting healthy, not just for the point of losing weight or anything like that, but it was, exercise is so important because it lifts you on so many levels unimaginable, like your mind, your spirit. And it also gives you purpose because you feel like you're achieving, especially when you come from a place where you feel like you're useless. That's how I felt when I was in my dark place. I felt like I can't do anything. First my eyes, my feet, and then the kidneys. Like, what am I going to do? Am I just going to be sitting on this wheelchair for the rest of my life and having no purpose? And it's at that point where I said, there's got to be something I can do. And, you find that in yourself, and you try and just don't have unrealistic expectations. You do it day by day. And before you know it, it's like you're this different person you never thought you were. Like when I look back and I think, is this really me? Like, this is who I am now, and I don't feel like any resentment or anger. In fact, I feel really proud of myself And that's really important. So that was one of the things. And then, of course, starting the dialysis. And again, before that, when they told me, I just took it to my own, you know, self-interest, basically, to be my self-advocate. So I'd print out all my blood work. I'd look at the GFR, which is what your percentage of kidney function is. So if it was getting lower, I would make sure that I wouldn't eat the foods that were not being filtered properly. Like I did my own research, basically. I became my own doctor and my own, and I would question things and do things. And it actually worked, because a lot of people think, well, what's the point of doing this? I have to go on dialysis, so I'm just not going to worry about it. But, there's a reason to worry about it, because if you want to have a transplant, that was my beacon of hope, then you got to make sure that your health is good. And part of that journey is to make sure your heart is okay, because if you don't have a good heart, then chances are you're not going to get to the point where, you do end up having a transplant. So everything I did had, there was a lot of benefits. I saw my life improving in a very positive way, which just motivated me more. It was like something that just propelled me to keep going and keep doing, because I could see the results and they were all positive.
Absolutely. And you know what? You took this with strides, and we used to laugh at certain things. We used to have she used to get such amazing attention from the, all the different authorities. You got to tell that, Joe, before we go to Nivedita and you guys talk about that dark place. Yes, we have to tell that story. There are times when it was like four of us sitting in a corner, and we'll always keep tabs on her, and sometimes she'll go into a coma, literally,
Like
a low sugar, right? And I would look at her, and I used to know that she was doing this. And, I would just see her start drifting off, and it happened at home and sometimes, and we'd have to call the emergency. But she has such a great sense of humor about this. Why don't you just tell us a little joke before we go to Nivedita? I always want to talk about that.
There's so many. Are you talking about the one at home? There's so many incidents.
At work, when you went. Yeah, well, basically they came, and she's, she can't speak, but she's hearing this, these gorgeous, EMS and so forth. She's laughing about it when she comes in as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a sense of humor, right? You do. You just have to, because, at the same time, I didn't realize how many times I escaped death from having those low sugars, because I didn't, for one moment, I didn't know, like, I was taking too much insulin, because I was so paranoid about keeping my blood sugars in control that I'm like, okay, if I have a little more insulin, at least I won't get the complications further, but they're just as bad, right? But in the process, it wasn't until 2012 when I started my insulin pump, because the insulin pump is the closest thing to thinking like a pancreas. It gives you your background, or if you're a diabetic, you probably know that's known as basal insulin, and it gives you a bolus insulin. So that's whenever you eat something, that's what your body would do naturally if you weren't diabetic. Your pancreas, that's the primary thing that it does. So for me, having the insulin pump, I never had a low sugar after that, and I used that well into for 6 years until I had my double transplant. So for me, the low sugars were always there. So I don't know if I built up a resistance to it, just because I felt like, okay, I never thought that it could get to. It's only once when the paramedics told me that they have a lot of diabetics who actually die from that it was kind of like shocking for me. I'm like, really, from a low sugar? I didn't even think that was possible. But they see, I'm always learning new things even now. Like learning about diabetes is like something you will always learn, continue to learn different things. It's a very complex condition or disease, but yes, it can be applied so simply by testing and knowing your numbers and knowing your carbohydrate ratios and studying it. So today I could walk. I mean, if I, before I'm not diabetic anymore, but just even before, like I could actually, I learned it so well that I could go somewhere and know exactly how many carbohydrates were in what. And I wouldn't have to calculate everything. So I kind of became master of my own domain, if you want to say. So yeah, but yes, having a sense of humor is good, definitely.
It sounds so much work. And when we come back, because I want Nivedita and you to have that conversation about being in that dark place, because you both were talking about that. So we'll explore that. However, we talk about type 1, but we also have to talk about type 2 as well, which is like what I have, but I have high blood sugar. I know mine's all over the place. I don't even take my medication because I'm doing alternative. but it's not saying that I'm not saying this. Don't take my word for it. What I should or should not be doing. However, it was getting me really sick, and we'll talk about that when we come back. So if you have any questions for Taz about type 1 or type 2, she's an amazing advocate because she's done this. I don't think there's any research she doesn't know about. And she's the perfect person to speak to because she goes above and beyond. So please do send your love, your comments, your questions, please. Nivedita, you were talking to Taz before about, and you're muted. You were talking to Taz before about you all both living in this dark space. I want you all to explore that because you do go into this dark place, and I will give you both the floor. So here we go.
There were times when I would be in that dark space because I also would have sugar issues. Sometimes my husband and I would be walking along the beach, and then suddenly my legs would start to get heavy and I just couldn't walk, could hardly speak. My husband would have to run to get the car, which could be miles up the road, and then come back and pick me up because I couldn't walk. And I had so many tests for diabetes, including diabetes insipidus, which is from the pituitary, and they couldn't find any sign of diabetes at all within me, although a specialist did say I was probably pre-diabetic. But those episodes were very scary because, I would go out of my body. I'd feel like if I was resting on a bench while waiting for my husband to come and get me, I would be lifting out of my body. And it wasn't an unpleasant sensation, but it was a bit scary, of course. But you can get also, when we were talking before, we mentioned about the pit of despair, because when you don't know what's going on with your body, you don't know. And if you don't know, you can't address it. So the pit of despair, when I used to go through periods of the pit of despair, for whatever reason, I would be at the bottom of the pit of despair. And then I would just say, okay, enough already. Let's get out of this pit of despair. Let's do it. What are you going to do to get out of this? And I found that exercise helped a lot. So I was very, very happy when you mentioned about your exercise, because at the moment I'm actually training to be a weight management consultant, and exercise is such an important part of life. It makes so many positive changes to your body. And I just love your resilience, and I love your passion, and I love how you've pulled yourself out of everything with everything that you've gone through. I just love how you've done all this. And I hear that you're writing a book or thinking of writing a book. So you're going to be helping so many people in this way who might be borderline diabetic and experience what I was experienced and just don't know what it's all about. So I'd be very interested in knowing your comments about that.
Absolutely. Like I think, and I'm speaking on your experience. Thank you for sharing that. But even with me, my situation, I did hit rock bottom, that dark place. And, and I mentioned in my journal that it is a place of despair. And I call it a very negative, and, um, it consumes you if you allow it to consume you. So you have a choice. I mean, everyone has a choice. But, a lot of people will be asking, well, how do I get out of that? How do I start? Where do I start? And the first thing you can do is just say, I don't want to be there. You kind of press the eject button and say, I don't want this. You recognize that. You become self-aware of yourself and say, I'm in tune with my emotions and how they make me feel. Like, you could walk in a room and you get this negative feeling, and most likely you're going to walk away if you feel that way. And that's the same thing. It's sort of the same concept. And you engage in positive things. And, it could be a simple thing. Like for me, the exercise was the best investment. And I have to thank my dad for that, because he's the one who used to always go to the YMCA and encourage me to go. And I was the kind of person who hated exercise. Like for me to walk would be, oh my God, seriously, I have to walk. And I didn't have any weight issues or anything like that. But here I was now with these braces. And, I thought to myself, I'm not going to be able to do this. Like I used to see these women the first day I went to the Y, they're doing like, half an hour to an hour on the elliptical. And I remember like thinking to myself, God, I don't think I could ever do that. And I remember once when no one was there, because the YMCA had a women's plus membership, which had a conditioning room on the top. So it was just women. And so I said to myself, when no one was there, I went on there and I challenged myself, and I could do 5 minutes. And for me, the 5 minutes was like, what? I can actually do this. And then the 5 minutes went into 10 minutes and then 15 minutes. And what that did for me was it just opened the door to and got rid of the darkness, because I felt like I could achieve something, but it did so much more than just made me feel like I was able to do something. It gave me the confidence, and it increased my self-esteem. And I thought, now I'm in positivity, and with positivity there was so many possibilities for me. So and then I got to a point where I was doing 2 hours on the elliptical, and I never thought in my wildest dreams I'd get there, but you got to start somewhere. So if anyone is in that dark place, just go for a walk, even 10 minutes. Just do something that is positive. Anytime you get that feeling, that trigger, do something positive. And I would recommend just a simple, if you can't walk, do the bicycle. If you can't do the bicycle, do something that makes you happy in terms of physical activity, because there are happy hormones with exercise. And it really is like, when I don't exercise, I feel down, because you sort of develop a good addiction to exercise. And it's amazing. It's probably the best investment I've made. And I've been doing it since, I've been exercising since, I would say, the last 25 years. I haven't stopped. I've never missed a day, except when I was having my transplant. And when I was on dialysis, even for 3 years, I couldn't. I tried to go on the elliptical. I couldn't. It was just impossible for me. It was too weak. But then what I did is I developed my own exercise plan while I was stationary in bed. So it included like a whole bunch of Pilates, breathing exercises, muscle extension, all kinds of things to do. And it kept my circulation going. But more importantly, it made me feel good. I still felt like I was getting my workout, and that was so important for me. So whatever happened in my life, whether it was, good, bad, or ugly, I was always with exercise. It just helped. So I think that's great that you also feel the same way. And I think
Yeah, yeah. And it's very important about the counting carbohydrates, because carbohydrates for some people are just a no-no, absolute no-no.
yeah,
Like, for example, I put myself on a plan, a weight management plan, and what suits me the best was the keto. And what I liked about keto was that it kept the carbs down, and that was the most successful for me.
yeah,
And positive attitudes is definitely a plus. That's half the battle won, because if you're going to remain positive and start to love yourself and love the skin you're in, no matter where you're at in life, then that's the other half won as well.
yeah.
Because then you can, when you're positive, you're radiating that light of positivity, and it's like a domino effect with other people, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That comes across to other people. And I've heard a lot of people say, you're so positive. Even my doctor, when I was on dialysis, you're always smiling, you're always positive. And, I just kept that going. For me, it was like, if I'm negative, I'm just hurting myself. That's the way I looked at it. I didn't benefit anything from being negative. I hated being negative. For me, it was like, just make the best of it. And I always found something that I loved about myself, even though I was going through dialysis and I couldn't do so many things. Um, I found purpose in everything, So I can't do the things I used to do, but I can still do. So, yeah, you still have to limit your intake of food and things that you're eating, and I still, but that's been the story of my life. You see, I've had the diabetes for 45 years, so I'm pretty used to, managing, adapting. I don't resist. And I think that was a very important thing in my journey. Whereas someone else who's recently, like you were saying, Diane, that you have type 2 diabetes, it's not going to be as easy, but eventually, you'll get there. But I just want people to know, don't wait until you do get the complication. Don't wait until you have, leaking blood vessels in your eyes and you have to laser and you're losing some of your vision. Don't wait until that. Don't wait until, your feet are at a point where you need to get help for them. I mean, these things can be prevented. Dialysis and kidney failure can be prevented. And the culprit is your blood sugars. That's the bottom line. And of course, carbohydrates and blood sugars go hand in hand. Proteins and fats do not have carbohydrates. And even when we go to that, like the perfect diabetic diet is actually a low carb diet. So when I talk in my journal, I talk about how I've been educated. Even if you do a Google search now, you'll find that they say that diabetics can eat 10 to 12 carbohydrates a day, servings. So that equates to about 10 to 12 slices of bread. And that's what I was taught for the last 20 years before. And that's when I sat down and I said, I really have to go back to where it started and see what I'm eating. And then it just dawned on me, well, let's say I just ate less carbs. Wouldn't I take less insulin? And sure enough, I went from taking, 65 units of insulin down to 20. And not only that, but I was able to control my blood sugar so much better. So I took my own initiative to do that. But again, it came because I had the history of diabetes so long that I was able to understand and be responsible and take accountability for myself. It was my diabetes. And even when I was young, my parents always, they guided me, of course, and my mom would help me with the shots until I graduated to a point where I could do it myself. But they always made me feel like it's my diabetes, because it is. No one else can, take care of you. Just, you have to do it yourself and take that responsibility. And sometimes
Excellent.
sometimes people think, you know what, I'm just going to leave it to my doctors. If my doctor says it's okay. And sometimes doctors make a mistake. When I say that, I mean that when they're testing you, they sometimes just do your fasting blood sugar, which could be normal, but then they have to do the HbA1c test, which is the 3 months, to get a more sure what your blood sugar really is. And, and a lot of it has to do with them not maybe diagnose it. So sometimes you may not be diabetic, and that's fine. But then sometimes people go in there and say, I'm not feeling well. So they'll just do the fasting blood sugar, and it may be like 5.5, which is normal, but that's 3 months. If they do the 3 months, they might find out it's 7.7. So you do have borderline diabetes, right? So it's just important to, if you have diabetes, just to educate yourself and learn it, because there's so much to know.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this, Taz. Mine is not 5.5. Trust me on that one. I actually tested this morning, and I was like, mm. And again, sometimes when you go, and another thing is when you're going over fasting, that's when you get a different reading as well. Now, for those who are joining us, we were Tazim Kanji. She has been living with type 1 diabetes for over 45 plus years, had a double transplant. She's diabetic free now, meaning double transplant, the kidneys and the pancreas. However, she still keeps the discipline. And I do want people to know that she did this. There were times your parents weren't living here at all. So you were living here on your own with your brother, times two as well. So you had to go through, and it was scary. And there's all these things she's done. She's legally blind in one eye. Was legally blind to begin with. She lost the sight. We're talking about someone who has overcome the ultimate, and she has a lot to teach us. There's no question. You talk about, and we have a little exercise we can share with the people, how, because when you have too much, when you're diabetic and in your pancreas, it's an overflow of energy. So we got to move that energy, and that's what I'm working on. May not be the best for that right now, but you have to move. It's too much energy, so the body is not producing the insulin it needs. Too much energy. It's all about energy, to tell you the truth. But you talked about having like 12 slices of bread. I guess the bad habit we have, excuse me, it says when we eat a lot at one time. You always have snacks. You have to space it out. So you can have so much, but make it into smaller portions. Is that one of the practices as well? I mean, what is Tazim's day like?
Oh, well, right now I'm not diabetic, so I
I
still,
know, but you still have it. What would have been Tazim's day like at that time?
it's for me, like I said, I'm always learning. So even when I was doing what I thought was right, I really wasn't, because I was still listening to what the dietitians were saying. It's only when, eating that. But then it came to a point, like I said, when I got my insulin pump, that I would wake up in the morning and I really didn't need to eat breakfast if I didn't want to, because my blood sugar was 4.8 and I wasn't hungry. And so I'd probably eat 2 hours later. When I test my blood sugar, then it would be 6.6. And okay, I'd have like, half a slice of toast, because the carbohydrates, I wanted to minimize them. Maybe a boiled egg, or, a protein, some cheese or something, and then I would just take like 2 units of insulin. And if I test 2 hours later, it would be 7.1, which is fine with me. And then before lunch, it went down to 6.5, for example. Then I'll calculate my carbs. But again, the key is always eating the less carbs, because there's something known as like high glycemic index. So those are the foods that will elevate your blood sugar, and then you start feeling hungry again. So because as I mentioned, thinking like a pancreas, when you eat small amounts, your blood sugars don't spike. So that's the whole premise between keeping a balance. But you can even, just like intermittent fasting. I'm not going to encourage that for anyone because you have to go through your doctor for that. I'm not a doctor. But the thing is, if you take like in my case with the insulin, when I was taking the insulin pump, I was able to eat smaller portions, but I wouldn't eat a lot of carbs, and I found my blood sugar was much better that way, and I could keep my weight in control too because I didn't gain weight. So that was how I did things. But everyone's different, right? And everyone's intake of carbs and what they want to eat is different. But I started to learn about instinctual eating, only eating when I'm hungry, and clean eating. Because when I look at nature, we were not supposed to be eating all these processed foods. It's something that is created to sort of market to everyone, and that's what we're eating. And no wonder diabetes has become so much more prevalent among so many people. Like it's going to be a bigger thing that's coming, where a lot of people are going to be diagnosed with diabetes because we're eating foods that our body is not used to processing, the high sugars, the high carbs, and there's just so much insulin in your body that can actually take care of that. So that's another thing. So I started to, and even as a transplant patient, I can eat whatever I want now, but I choose to eat healthy. It's not that I'm making any sacrifices. It's something I enjoy doing. If I have a choice between a big chocolate cake, I'll eat some. I'll have a little piece, but I'd rather have that and something that's healthy, like a salad. So I know it sounds boring, but this is the way I prefer to do it. I'm not doing it by force. It comes naturally with me, and not everyone's going to be in that same frame of mind as I am, but that's how it worked for me.
Well, portion control is really important.
Yes, absolutely.
Nivedita, why don't you stand up and why don't you show us that practice that we can do in regards to moving the energy from the pancreas to the abdomen?
And it's called near hand, far hand. And it's like if you're in an air-conditioned room and it's lovely and cool and it's about 40 degrees outside. When you open the door, all the hot air whooshes out the door and the room starts to get hotter. So what you're doing is dissipating the energy. So if you have one hand pointing down towards your pancreas and the other hand about 15 inches away, and you say, actually, I can't remember what the
Wojo.
Wujo. Wujo. Wu is the stomach and Jo is the lower abdomen. So it's, you would be saying, dear soul of my pancreas, I love you. You have the power to heal yourself and dissipate your over energy. Do a good job. Thank you. So you're honoring the body. You're honoring the intelligence in the body, that the body can heal itself given the opportunity. So then you would say, dear soul of Wu Jo, I love you. Please dissipate the over energy in my pancreas. Thank you. And then you would say, Wu Jo, Wu Jo, Wu Jo. And you would feel that the energy from your pancreas was moving right down to your lower abdomen. So the lower abdomen is like, according to Chinese medicine, is like this huge receptacle of energy that is, you're able to put all your extra energy in there where it's stored, and then it is distributed around the whole body once it's transformed. So it's Wujo, 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 Wujo. And if you're sensitive, you'll feel that like a breeze coming down from the pancreas and out to the abdomen. Wujo, 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 Wujo. And Dianne, if you've got the book handy, maybe you could show the book.
Not in front of me. But definitely, you do that for about 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, and I could feel my stomach already. There you go, the Soul, Mind, Body medicine by Dr. Jigon Shah. And I could feel my hands and I could feel my stomach as well, feeling some things happening there as well. So, and there's many, many, many different practices in that book. It's like a Bible of practices. So I highly recommend everyone to get that book.
This is very simple. This is one of the first books I bought from my teacher. And it's the most amazing book because it actually works for all sorts of things. You can use it for migraines, for headaches, all sorts of things where you just put a hand above the body, above the head, and you would say, Ijo, 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 and E is the upper part of the body here. There's certain names, and this is all based on the well-known Chinese medicine, which has been around for thousands and thousands of years and which works.
Lovely. Thank you. Tazim, I just want you to quickly give, we talked about it, but just to summarize, and Nivedita, if you like, it's up to you. If it's okay to do a reading for Taz or message, if that's possible, that would be great. However, in regards to type 1 and type 2, because a lot of people are type 2 and a lot of people are type 1, and we talked a lot about type 1, but I don't want to dismiss the type 2. So what are some of the things they can do for type 2, or some of the warning signs, early warning? Because you went straight to type 1.
Diabetes, which is not something that's hereditary. Like I said, I don't know if it happened because of a virus, or maybe it was the vaccine I took, or the trauma that I had when I was hit. That's when the symptoms sort of started. But if you're type, good news is that it's reversible. It is reversible. But again, it has to be reversible by exercise and diet, when learning your carbohydrates. And as much as people don't want to, for people to make that change, it's like, you're asking me to do the impossible. I know that food is an addiction for many people. I mean, we love to eat. We celebrate eating on all levels. When someone's born, when someone has a birthday, an anniversary, there's food everywhere. And to suddenly make that restriction where you are faced with, a huge array of choices, and now you're like, okay, now how do you do that if you don't understand what diabetes is, and what eating something, how it converts into your sugar and doesn't get used up as energy? Again, I want you to use that, the blood thing I was telling you about, the 5 liters. Like if you're type 2 diabetic, and you already have diabetes, you have 2 spoons of sugar already there, and then you're not watching your diet, then it gets to 3 spoons and 4 spoons, and before you know it, your blood sugar is so high, and that's when you can get to a point where your body just does not produce any more insulin to help that, and then you get into shots. So you will actually go from having the metformin or whatever diabetic medication you're taking, the tablets, to the point where you're taking insulin. And the good news is that you can actually reverse it by watching your carbohydrates and use. I have friends who have done that. Both my parents are diabetic, but they check their blood sugars. And my father has been diabetic type 2, but he watches what he's eating. And my mom has a little bit of elevated, but when she tests it, she knows. So she'll make those sacrifices. She'll say, I'm just going to have half a slice of bread, or I'm not going to have this. And that's what it is. But you need a tool for that. And the only tool that's available is your blood sugar testing, your glucometer. That's so important, because you're not going to know. The worst thing you can do is just ignore it, because with type 2 diabetes, you still have your beta cells in your pancreas are still producing a little bit of insulin, but you're insulin resistant. So if you eat something, you'll have a little bit that will help you, but eventually if you keep continuing on the carbs, that's going to go away, and then you're going to have to go into taking shots. So it's really important. That's just really the difference with me for type 1 diabetes. I have no insulin, so it doesn't matter. I mean, I remember growing up, and my mom's friends would say, "Oh, give her, bitter gourd, like the juice of it." And while it helps, the thing is, it's not going to help me because I don't have any insulin, so I've got to take it through insulin shots, right? But a type 2 diabetic still has some insulin, and you can reverse that by, like I said, simply eating healthy, cut down on the carbs, test your blood sugar. Even if I used to test 10 times a day, my fingers.
I have to tell you, sorry. I was on Jaminet and metformin, and I stopped. Nobody do this at home, okay? Nobody this. I'm not telling anyone to do this. I was getting more sick than anything else. I couldn't handle it until I started. Oh my goodness! I thought I was going to die.
You feel tired. You feel lethargic. Your eyes start feeling. If you get blurry vision, that's because of the high sugars. And
I had it all. I had to stop milk, dairy, everything. But what I do notice, I grew up on brown rice, parboiled rice, and also whole wheat flour because of my dad. But now I find that the parboiled rice, and of course it's everything that we buy now is not the same as when we go back 30, 40 years ago. It's so processed, even the parboiled, and it reached a point that was just spiking my sugar. Well, everything spikes my sugar. You know what? You just can't live. I'm not disciplined like you whatsoever, and I'll be the first to confess that. But I can't eat that rice. I've switched to jasmine rice. I just got a toaster oven, air fryer. That's my little new toy. And I'm telling you, it's amazing because now I don't have to use,
Yeah.
the oils and so forth. I don't really cook with oils, but it doesn't matter. I do still eat sweet stuff because sometimes I just feel I have to have it. And I don't know if that's a right thing or a bad thing because sometimes you feel like maybe I know it's not low, but it's just you have that craving that you have to have something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a totally, I mean, you've had cake and certain things and you make things differently as well. But the point is,
Yeah, sorry.
you have to know your body. You have to pay attention. I stopped the medication the day I actually became a Dow Hands practitioner. I stopped my medication because I could not handle how sick I was feeling. I
But you,
couldn't eat this, I couldn't eat that, I couldn't drink milk, which I love. All these different things. So there's a lot of side effects. I know at one point the doctor had put me on 2 Jaminet, which is like 2,000 milligrams, and then you bring it down to one, and then it's half one metformin and so forth. But this thing was not working. So I decided to do this on my own. Have I paid the price? Absolutely. I'm doing this healing, but it's also about the mindset. Definitely, it's about the mindset. And I want everyone to know that everything we do, we have to take, like you said, Taz, you have to take responsibility for it.
yeah, yeah, okay.
And it's a lifestyle we live in a country where sometimes, I am not the outside type of person. I do have an exercise thing here, and of course it's just a discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Just sometimes you don't want to get up, and find my sleeping habits are not the best because sometimes we do all of the healing. However, we have to train ourselves, and I'll be the first one to admit that I am guilty of not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Well, the first
So I hope this show will encourage people
do that.
to find out more and ask questions to Taz and share this because it's something we keep talking about, and talk is cheap until we do something. Sorry, you're going to say, Taz?
No, I was just going to say that it's a very difficult thing. I empathize with anyone who is diabetic and is struggling with trying to keep their blood sugars in control. And again, it's really what you want for yourself. Like you have to, how you have a vision board of what you want in life. I want to do this. I want to do that. But what do you want from yourself? Because if you don't take care of it now, in 10 years, you're probably going to face some complications because the blood sugars, the uncontrolled long-term, like it took me 20 years for me to get my complications. And it wasn't because I felt fine. I mean, backpacked all over Europe. I went to my best wedding in New York. I went to university, and I didn't have the complications then, but my body, it was like a slow progression, a slow poison, if you want, until finally it just all came down. And that was my wake-up call. And my wake-up call was actually my blessing, because if I continued down that path, I wouldn't be here 20, well, it's been 25 years. I wouldn't be 25 years today with enough vision to function. I don't use a cane. I'm very independent. I have limitations, but I can live on my own if I have to. I don't, it's not something that, but again, it's all about that. Like, what do you want for yourself? What's your why? You got to ask yourself, what is that you want? Like, do you want to have a good life, or do you want to suffer? Because we all know the stories of diabetes. I mean, we've seen people, whether it's a relative or a friend, face a lot of complications as a result of diabetes, right? So again, that vision board is, you want good health. Make that your priority. That's all I can say. And if you don't know what to do, the first thing you can do is just start by testing your blood sugar. Make that your first step. Say, okay, you know what? Tomorrow I'm going to test my blood sugar 5 times a day. Because when you see that number go to 11 or 12 or 13, if you care about yourself, you're going to do something about it. And then cut down on the carbs. You'll just notice. But, make sure that you have a fast-acting carbohydrate. Like, I don't want to give this advice and then someone has a low sugar and they're not prepared for it. So you've got to study the diabetes. Go on Google, do your research, find out. Be prepared. Always prepared for lows, and trying to, because that's what in the end causes the conflict.
What is the best rice do you recommend? Because I switched to jasmine rice. because I couldn't handle the other
Yeah.
rice anymore.
Rice is probably one of the worst things for a diabetic. Cooked rice is like one serving of carbohydrates, which is 15 grams, right? Now, you know, in culture, rice is like a staple. For it, you have a plate of rice, you're eating way too much rice, your blood sugar is definitely going to go high. And the difference between brown rice and white rice is just the fact of fiber. So when you have fiber in there, it even the same with bread, white bread and brown bread, it's just fiber. It probably has, if you look at the carbohydrate tables, it probably says, 3 grams of fiber. So when you're having um, your insulin, it basically will help your blood sugars. It won't go like hypoglycemic. It won't go so high. You won't have peak, right? So I'm gonna say, like, what I do is I'll have some rice. I'll have that, but then I mix it with cauliflower rice, which is available everywhere, and I'm okay with that. Still get my little, fix of rice, or I'll eat it separately and say, okay, favoring that, and then the rest is just the cauliflower rice. So I don't feel like I'm, not satisfied. Like I feel like I find other ways to satiate my cravings, because I don't believe that you should. I think it's the worst thing you can do is not, like, if I feel like having cake, I'll eat some, but I'm just not going to finish the whole thing. And you can always take the carbs that you need to, like with the insulin. I'm not going to eat a whole chocolate bar, but I'll have a couple of pieces, and then I eat it slowly and I enjoy it, and I'm like, okay. And then I remind myself, again, being mindful. I've had this before. If I don't have it, it's not the end of the world, because I'm going to have to pay a price for that. My blood sugar is going to go high. I have to do this. I have to work extra at the gym. It's not worth it. So for me, that's the way I think, but I know everyone doesn't think that way. So it's you have to train the way you eat and the way you think, and it takes 30 days to break a habit. So you got to start somewhere. You just have to practice that on a daily. Take it day by day. You might get days where you messed up and you just ate the whole bag of potato chips. Okay, you did it. Be kind to you're human. It happened. Take care of your blood sugars. Go back on again. Never too late. Eventually, you'll get the hang of it. You'll feel it. Your body will know.
This is definitely an eye opener. And we're here with Tazim Kanji and Nivedita, and we're talking about type 1, type 2 diabetes. I do know that I drink cinnamon water, or we have what we call bitter melon or corride, which I never used to eat ever, but now I've been eating it. And those are the things, and even the cinnamon, right now, this is actually cinnamon water. Yeah, there's cinnamon in here. That also helps that as well. So I want everyone to know that definitely this is not the end of the world unless we choose to. Definitely. So is it, Nivedita, is it okay to do a flow or message? If it's not, it's okay.
I'd rather do a private one.
So we can do it after. We could do it offline.
Yes. Okay. There is something I would like to say about rice and pasta and potatoes and all of this sort of thing. There are really good alternatives on the market that you can have, and one is of konjac, and konjac is a fruit that has no carbohydrates, and it can be made into, it's just a fruit that's processed into, it can look like rice, it can look like pasta, it can look like spaghetti, and there's I think in one packet there's about 11 calories and very minimal carbs, and that's quite filling, and it's actually a fruit that can be eaten in place, and of course the cauliflower rice, like you said. There are alternatives.
I've never heard of that. Do you know it, Taz?
No, I haven't, but I know there's something called Pasta Zero, and you get it at some stores. And I wonder if that's...
Okay, wait. I have to stop you. Anything that has zero at the end of it is not a friend of Dianne. Not Coke Zero. Well, first of all, I don't drink Coke and so forth and pop and stuff.
But research the konjac noodles.
Maybe you could put it in the comments for everyone who's listening.
Yes, because that's really, really good. So if sometimes you're really hanging out for some pasta, you can use konjac noodles instead, and they're very filling. Or you can put it in soups, and it's like the thin vermicelli, like the Chinese vermicelli, and you can put it in soups and things like that. And that's really, really good.
I didn't know.
Excellent. Lovely. Well, hey guys, it's been fun. Taz, I hope you will come back and join us and talk more. She's an excellent cook. I know she has lots of recipes that hopefully maybe one day she can share with us there, because she's done the work. And this is like a lifetime of trial and error working for her diet. And it's something that I'm hoping that she would share with the world, because we need to see this. There's so much here, so much information. I do ask everyone to go back and listen, share it with someone, talk to someone. We also did a show on the Divine Soul Journey with Taz, and we talked about certain things as well, similar, and maybe going a little bit deeper too. So I do hope that's Divine Soul Journey show, that you can get that on YouTube. Catch us on the replay. Nivedita and our closing. Taz, what would you like to say in closing?
No,
We gotta go when we're having so much fun.
Thank you for having me. And if anyone is on that journey with diabetes, just have faith and hope, because it's not an impossible thing to get control over your own life and not allow diabetes to control you. But you can.
If anyone, maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know, I didn't ask this. If anyone wants to get a hold of you, are they okay? Is that okay for them to contact you?
Yeah, yeah, they can.
Not that she's a gorgeous woman, by the way, okay? I've always said that to her ever since. Look at her. This is the way she looks every day. Okay? Not like me. This is the way she looks every day. Gorgeous, beautiful, beautiful family. Love your family. And please, they're watching. Love you guys. Yes, I have to come see you.
Beautiful heart. You've got a beautiful heart.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Definitely they have had their challenges as well. Apart from being diabetic, your parents have had their challenges as well. There's no question, that's we're going to talk about that. Definitely. So thank you so much, Taz. Nivedita, what would you like to say in closing?
I'd like to say it's been such an honor to have you on the show, Taz. I just admire you so much for what you've done. And it's really important for people to take control of their lives and their diet. Diet is the most important thing. I mean, people need to be able to research the right way to eat, the right food groups, because nutrition is so important. And you can get lots of healthy nutrition and shed weight as well, if you want to. You just have to look for the guidelines.
Oh, and just to mention, Nivedita is also a yoga teacher.
Yes, I've been teaching yoga since 1979, so I'm an old fogey.
Well, we have to actually bring back that segment where she will teach us certain things as well, to have
I love yoga therapy.
Exercise routine. Sorry?
Yeah. I loved teaching yoga therapy because it's so gentle. I'm all into being gentle with yourself and loving yourself.
Yeah, it's very therapeutic, I'm sure.
And we do an awesomeness practice when before, as the start, as part of the warm up. And what I get everyone to do is stand up, put their fingers to their toes, run their hands up the legs, and say, "I feel awesome." And they do that about 10 times. And by the time they finish that, they're feeling really awesome. And the other thing I get them to do is say, "Gratitude changes my life." So they're affirming, they're putting that positive affirmation into their life, and they're doing that the same way. Gratitude changes my life.
Yeah. Well, you have to look at it this way too. When you even put your hands out, you're also stretching the body without realizing it too as well, right? So I want to thank you, ladies, and everyone who actually commenting and for reaching out. And definitely, this is something we need to talk about, and it's not to be taken lightly. But then it's not to be taken too deeply, because then you could go on the other side and get so caught up in it. And this is not why we're here. We want to know there's still hope. And this is all about hope. If Taz can do it, we can all do it.
Yes,
not as regimented as she is. Yes, she's a little bit, but that's her discipline.
But you know what?
Discipline.
Once you start, like I said, I wasn't the greatest diabetic. I made a lot of mistakes. I really did. I have to admit that, because from your mistakes, you learn lessons, right? But the thing is, acknowledging that you made mistakes is human. That's fine. But once you realize that you're on the right path and you see your blood sugars go normal and you start feeling better, because you will feel better, you will do it yourself. No one's going to force you. You'll come to that point. It's a process. You have to allow yourself to get through that process. But if you don't do and you don't start, you'll never get that. But it's such a nice feeling because you don't realize, you get used to being tired and feeling not very good. Like you were saying, Dianne, right? But once you start regulating your blood sugars, you'll feel that flood of energy come in. You'll be able to exercise. You'll be able to think clearly. You won't feel guilty every time you eat, and you won't resent the fact that you are a diabetic. You'll actually embrace the fact that you're on a journey of healing and recovery, and it's good because what you're doing is benefiting yourself, loving yourself in the process.
I know, just quickly before we go, in closing, many people have said to you, well, you can, you're healthy now, in certain areas, but you still have, your limitation in the physical body. And they said you can eat and do whatever you want. And you said, you don't even understand anymore what that life is like, because you're so used to this new life. There's no way for you to go back to being this. Because I know, like I said, you're so health conscious. You've always been health conscious ever since I've known you, and the way you eat and so forth. So going back, once you have a second life, is basically what you have, and you have to appreciate and honor that second chance that you have. And for I want to say this, they'll never see this, I don't know. The donor that gave you your kidney, and it's from one source, and pancreas, they were here for you. And I want to thank, whoever it is. Thank you so much to the family for making that decision, because that is the decision why you're here. And we have to acknowledge that. And I know you embrace that, and you're grateful and thankful.
When I first got the call in 2018, September 8th, when they said, hey, the person from Toronto General called me and said, is this Tazim Kanji? I said, yes. She says, this is the Toronto Hospital. I knew straight away. They said, we have a take pictures for you. I was nervous. I was shaking. I was excited. And then the first thing I did was acknowledge that someone had passed away, because that's how it happened, right? I mean, someone passed away. And I said a prayer. And even now, I don't know who my donor was, because for privacy reasons, they don't disclose that. But every year I write a letter to his family. I knew he was a male. I don't know much about him. That's it. But I always say a prayer, and I'm so blessed. And that's why even with my journey now, I don't take that for granted. I mean, this is a real gift. Only 11% of dialysis patients get a transplant. So, and there's a big list there. So for me, I don't want to abuse my body, because it would be a disservice to my donor. It's like, he gave me this, and how can I do this? And also some of the medications that transplant patients take for the rest of our lives, you are predisposed to having diabetes. So, all of a sudden you're on dialysis, you can't eat this, you can't eat that, and now you're not. So you're, again, bombarding your body with carbohydrates, which, like any person, you would be predisposed to diabetes. And knowing that, I do my best to keep it going, because I've come this far. Why would I digress and do something wrong? So yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because it's so important. But yeah, I always think about my donor and everything. And,
well, before we go, and just take a moment to Swan, we go over, it's okay, it's live. I want you to just briefly tell us. I don't want people to believe that you got the transplant and everything was fine and dandy and so forth. No. That came with complications too for quite some time. So it doesn't matter. We'll just chat. Just tell us briefly, like, when you got the call and you got the transplant, like in a year and a half to 2 years, you still had some challenges.
Well, I mean, I had the transplant, and then, like I said, on September 10th, 2018, I had the transplant. On the 18th, I was back home, and I thought, wow, 7.5 hours of surgery. I feel great. I can't believe this. That same night, I started to get this excruciating pain. I collapsed, basically. I mean, I was in so much pain. Turns out I had a 1 kilo blood clot that was, internal bleeding. So they had to open me up again. I was rushed to the Toronto General. They didn't think I would make it, but I did. I spent the next 5 weeks. I lost so much weight. I went from like 127 pounds to 105. And I was, pretty much skin and bones, because I couldn't eat. And there were so many other complications, more bleeding, hallucinations, this, that, and the other. I actually, one was like, why did I have this transplant? I'm in so much, like, why is this happening to me? My quality of life is supposed to be better. So I broke down, and I just felt like I'm in such a, but fast forward a year later, everything changed, because again, the human mind and the body has but I started walking, I started walking when I got home, my brother got me a Fitbit. I used the walker. Vanity was out of the window there. I didn't care. I had to build my strength, and that's what I wanted to do. So whatever I was applying with my diabetes, all the principles and the values and the discipline that I learned, I was bringing it along with, I did it in my dialysis. And now, so that's what I'm saying, exercise, all these things, it carries forward in so many positive ways. So that was, as you mentioned, I had the complications, and every month I still go for my blood work. I check everything before even my transplant coordinator has the results. I already know she's not going to call me and change everything because everything is good. So I already know how to read everything, understand everything. You sort of become, like I said, your self-advocate in health. And it's such an important thing because it's a part of me. So if I don't do that, I feel lost. So it's something I look forward to doing, so I am.
I
So
don't
you
believe.
know what they say, the body is the temple of the soul. So I honor you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't believe there's anybody on this earth, and there may be, because again, I know my brother-in-law's sister had dialysis. She had something was left in her body when she was 25, an instrument when she had her appendix out, and 25 years after she ended up, they didn't know it was poisoning her, and she had a transplant as well. So it comes in different ways, shapes, and form. But there are very few people I should rephrase that. There's nobody I know besides you who have been so disciplined with this. But it's something was a way of life for you. It's not something that just happened overnight. It's been a way of life. And it's your whole life. And you spent your birthday at the hospital, the 50th birthday when it happened.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, Tazim, there is a reason why you've been given this task, and one that you can walk the walk and talk the talk. And it's time for for people to hear your story. And I know you're starting to do that slowly.
Yes.
So if anybody is out there and you would like to share this, have Taz talk at your events, symposiums, and so forth about this. I can't think of anybody very beautiful, highly educated, extremely educated she is. She is, literally, she's very educated. Nobody would believe all the degrees that she has. And this is going through all of this while, remember, she got this around the age of 8 and so forth. So please, I ask you to reach out to Taz.
Yes, I'd be happy to answer.
And, I believe this is why she needs to do this for all of us, including myself. I love you to the moon and back. God, I'm getting emotional. I love you to the moon and back, and I am so happy. And the funny thing is, no matter how sick she was, she always smiling and always looking like this, always makeup and always here and always white dress. So I want to thank you. And again, sorry?
When you start feeling good about yourself, like if you take an interest in how you feel, it radiates, right? Like she was saying, it radiates to one. So that's very important.
Absolutely. Taz, I hope you will come back, and there's so much conversation. We could talk about self-image. We could talk about all these things. So many things that happens and is thrown out the window when we're working on things. But it's just people need to hear your story because it doesn't end here. We just touched the surface because there may be things that you would like to share, maybe things you would not like to share. But you know what they say, heal yourself and then you can heal the world. And this is what you're doing, and you're doing right now. So I want to thank you so much on behalf of all of us. There's so much to learn. And, she's there, and thank God for all the different technologies we have where you can actually be in so many places globally. Maybe Nivedita might ask you to talk to her group at some point in time, things like that. We don't know. That's totally up to you guys. So again, I want to thank you both. And I so admire you. And again, your parents for always never giving up on you, ever, no matter what, because they were all the way in Kenya for most of this.
Well, they actually
in the early ages.
Yeah. No, they spent a lot of time here when I was critical with things.
They did. But there were times when you were on your own, but
Yeah.
they weren't here. So I know it was not easy for them and they decided to make that sacrifice and move for other reasons too, to move to here because, again, there are times when you don't know if you were going to wake up in the morning or wake up the next hour. I know that.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you so much for sharing
Thank you.
this. And
for having
again,
we're
I'm
so
saying
grateful to have you here, and
Mhm.
we definitely want you on again because there's more to your journey than the suffering you went through. You know, there's so much more to your journey. Your journey's only just starting in some ways. You've been through that part of the journey, but there's more to your journey than you could possibly imagine.
Well, apart from that, you two have a lot of conversations you can have about diet, about food, about whatever. There's, recipes and, your keto diet and your this and this, which I'm all lost about all of that. So it's more than what you see here right now because there's a lot that has to be done behind the scenes that she does at home. Nivedita does as well. I mean, even with Nivedita's age, you would not believe some of the things like she's gone through as well. We all go through. So I just want to tell everyone there is hope, but there's also the fact that it's never too late to make that conscious decision. And you've actually opened my eyes a lot to certain things. And am I going to be perfect in changing my habits and so forth? The most important one I know ever since my dad is exercise. It's exercise. We have to start there. So once we start exercising, our mindset changes. Say, oh my goodness, if I'm exercising, oh, I need to do this now. I have to change this. And you got to start somewhere. And again, I'm not the outside kind of person. However, I'm going to do my best. That's all I can say forward to do my best. And I cannot thank you enough for sharing this with me. And I'm going to be knocking on your doors and maybe you could hold me accountable and so forth because I can't stand it anymore. It just drives me out of my mind. So on that note, I want to thank each and every one of you. I want to thank our audience. Yes, we've had people watching, but they've been so focused and what we're saying that they didn't even ask any questions because and I'm sure they could put the questions in the comments in there as well, because the conversation is so deep, but yet enlightening. Thank you, Taz. It's lovely seeing you. And, no matter how you felt, you were always smiling. And that smile is always there. And that's a smile I love. And that's a smile I know for over 20 plus years. So I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank you all for being very patient with us. And Taz in particular, thank you for your time. Vita, as
Thank you.
always. So until I don't ever want to end this. Oh geez. I don't want to end this, but we have to go. So I want to thank everyone here. And this is definitely one of those shows that's very close to me. So on that note, I want to say until next time on the Nivedita and Dianne show. There's so many events coming up, but I don't want to spoil the moment. So I want to thank you each and every one and have an awesome week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Dianne, and